change, health outcomes, and also mental health. For everyone who just arrived, you may come closer to the front seat so you may see more clear. Yeah, you may move to the front. Thank you. So today,
recording
my name
in
is
progress.
Rauf. I'm the moderator for the guest lecture for today. I'm honored. And this event held by the Master of Health Policy and Management and Master of Public Health, Faculty of Medicine, Public Health and Nursing, Universitas Gadjah Mada, support by HDSS Sleman. And we are honored to have 5 distinguished speakers that will deliver a presentation and sharing to us about their latest publications and research. So I will say hello, guten Morgen, Prof. Reiner. Okay, good morning. Also, we have Julia here, and also Dr. Sandra, Prof. Steen, and also Jamila. And yeah, you may come to the front. I'm in the audience. Okay. Okay. So today we have a specific topic related to the climate change, population health, and also public health. And climate change itself has a profound implication to human health. So it has a negative impact from the infectious disease to the mental well-being. So today, if you have like interest to study, or maybe your thesis topic is related to this today topic, it will be good for you. You may ask to our speakers, and also for start the lecture. For start the lecture, we will have introductions of our first speaker. So now we have first speaker. We have Prof. Reiner Subon. I hope I spell it correctly. Has been the head of the Institute of Global Health at the Heidelberg University Hospital. He's also a guest professor for global health and climate change at the Umeå University in Sweden. And he's also a member of Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC. Prof. Reiner is an esteemed expert in the climate change and population health. Now he will be presenting on climate change and health. Prof. Reiner, we are excited to hear your presentation, so the floor is yours, please.
Good morning, guten Morgen, god morgon. Jag har varit gästprofessor för klimatförändring och hälsa i Umeå. Du ska hälsa Navi från mig. Sorry, this was a little, I just told them, I greeted them, because I was also once in Sweden, a guest professor in the north of Sweden. They are from Gothenburg. Okay, this is me. Thank you very much. Maybe the first slide? Well, while the technical glitch is overcome. So thank you for the very kind, exuberant introduction. And it's not the first time that I'm here. I was here 12 years ago. And Yudi Maharanrata, the current dean, was in Heidelberg 10 years ago. And there's a lot of traffic. Fatwa was with us and so forth. And we have triangular, oh, I can talk. We have a triangular relationship with Umeå, and they are very active in climate change and health. So how can we do climate change and health? It's not obvious. It's not like doing cardiovascular research or epidemiological research on diabetes on a very focused way. You do a cross-sectional or you do a randomized controlled trial. Let's see how this works, and we will explain to you a little bit. I think you all know about climate change. Maybe not so much about the impacts of climate change, not so much about what can be done about it. And yeah, so let's start. This is Heidelberg. Very, very quaint town, very green. Welcome to Heidelberg anytime. Erasmus Plus and so forth. It doesn't work. Well, they are working it. I am not empowered. I'm not empowered. Can you make it work? Well, I hate to say next slide all the time because I have a lot of animations. Why don't you do the whole list? And so further. This is so old school, you know. Next, please. Next, please. Thank you. Stop. So first we are unpacking the nexus because it's a very complicated web between climate change and health. Many roles of climate change has, being a victim, but also being a perpetrator. We are emitting a lot of CO2 to the atmosphere as health sector. Then I will show you some of the main impacts. And then comes the main thing, the research challenges. Because we are here in a way in a mission, or on a mission, we think that there's a wonderful tool, the HDSS, you may have heard about this. HDSS is Health and Demographic Surveillance System, and it is so far climate blind, if you like. And we want to make it climate ready. And we've done this already together with Tintin in Malaysia, we've done it in Africa, and there are many more of these HDSSs who want to, I hate the term, upgrade to a climate-ready HDSS. But there are challenges, and I will go through them. So I take most of my time will be on the research challenges and how to do research. Maybe the battery is empty. Is it on? It worked. Oh, I have to give it to you and then say next slide. So, and once we have it, so the time scale is different. Climate change over decades. Our research grants come for 3 years. Health impact is not only the impact, there are also positive health effects of climate, not of climate change, but avoiding emissions, co-benefits. And then I zoom in on this HCSS, how we can improve this. I assume you have a knowledge of HCSS, so I won't go into what is an HCSS so much. And then the high road or the highway is to come to one data point, the climate attributable burden of disease. You can do it either in DALIs or in dollars. If you want to talk to big powers, like in the COP conferences, you better come with, unfortunately, with dollar amounts. They convince, unfortunately, more than health burden. And then the last thing is the most exciting one when we work with climate modelers. And I hear you have a wonderful Institute of Meteorology, and you can work with them as well. We have one similar in Germany, in Sweden, in Bergen, there's Bergen in Norway, there's a climate model institute. So we need to have new partners if we want to go into this research, and then we can project. We can not only say this is the current burden under this scenario, by 2050, by 2100, we will have so and so many extra malnutrition death, extra diabetes death from climate change. Okay, just a brief, how do we get from climate change to health? You start to the left, CO2 equivalent, right? Greenhouse gases. Is, if you like, simplification, but it's always good to simplify. Oops. I want to go back, I went forward, sorry. So it is a product, it's a think experiment, just follow me. The number of feet of footprint, yeah, the number of population number. On average, the more there is, the more there's a footprint. Of course, not everybody has the same footprint, I know. Then times the GDP per person, because it's by creating GDP that these footprints arise. No country in the world wants to limit this growth, particularly not those LMICs. They need and they want to grow. So there's no way we can fiddle with this one. Population is taking care of itself because all projections say that we are reaching a plateau. So there's no need for population control or whatever. Then the growth wouldn't be a problem if there was no energy use linked to the growth. But energy use per unit of GDP is a decisive factor in this equation. In America, they create the same GDP with double the amount of energy. In the US, sorry. So there are other countries, even Japan, Sweden, Germany, that come with half, that can do with half and still are pretty wealthy and healthy. And then the next one is we could use as much energy as we wanted if it didn't have carbon. So I'm sorry to always quote Sweden. Sweden has almost no carbon in its electricity because they have so much water energy. But they have cars and they have factories, and so they do have emissions per energy use. Yeah? So you can, if you talk to climate folks, that's a good one, you can twiddle policy-wise with this. This is efficiency. You can twiddle with this. This is energy use per GDP. No, this is efficiency. This is decarbonization. This is growth, and this is population. They together create the CO2 emissions, GHG, greenhouse gas emissions, and land use. And we're in Indonesia, so land use changes, meaning cutting rainforest, is the main source of emissions. I mean, you destroy the sources of CO2. It's tantamount to increasing emissions. So in most LMCI, this is the most important part, and people always stare at emissions, at cars, at planes, but rarely they look at land use. And that creates concentrations up there, and that creates the warming business, which you know. And there's a path which many convoluted pathways to disease. We will look into this. And God forbid, I hand it to you when it doesn't work. Death. So here's where the green arrows are. That's where you all come in. We need to protect population from the ill health effects of climate change. And this is for us to block it there. Death is very late. This is why we need an HDSS, which doesn't use death as the only outcome. And we need to also to look at early warning and all the rest of it. Not enough, that's called adaptation. Adaptation, for those who are not so familiar, is climate change happens and has happened, and we want to adapt to it, meaning protecting population. Mitigation is avoiding emissions and increasing sinks, CO2 sinks. So the mitigation part, we then have to, as citizens of this world, convey this information to the COP conferences, to the IPCC, to the national governments. Look, in your country or in the world, climate change does this and this and this damage to health. This is not known. They know exactly how much damage to the forest, how much damage to the polar bears, how much damage to the forests and the agriculture, so forest I already said. But this information is our duty to collect it and to convey it. Because health is a powerful argument. If only we had the data. This is now going up to avoid into climate policy, to avoid the root cause of all. This is like prevention, mitigation. In our language, is prevention. And adaptation is cure, treatment. Thankfully, while we behave on an individual level in a climate-friendly way, for example, I walk instead of taking my car, I generate health co-benefits. Of course, walking is also good for my cardiovascular, and it's good for the climate. eating no red meat. Good for climate, it's good for health. So we can use in our daily counseling, for those who really become doctors, have to counsel patients, please use the climate argument as an additional argument to what you would have said anyways. And there are now research and there are publications. There's a group in Heidelberg who works on climate co-benefit ready patient counseling. Okay. Now, what is the nexus here? It's a little bit complicated. I think there are 9. There's something, I think there's the, well, okay. Health is a motivator, as I said. My kids, my grandkids, your future kids, your nieces. You want to protect the health of yourself, but also future generations. That is one, it's the first really dangerous risk factor that is intergenerational. Well, of course, genetics, yes, you can't do much about it, but it's the first environmental risk factor that's intergenerational. Next thing is generator of co-benefits. By doing that, you increase health. And that's also relevant on a national level. There are countries, and I think your country is still a little bit in this, who use biomass for cooking in the rural areas. And that has a footprint, and it has a health effect. So by a big program like in India, like in China, everybody uses an LNG, then liquid natural gas. Then you avoid both, well, there's some emissions, but very clean compared to the wood and the dung. And you avoid the health hazard for the baby on your back and for the child playing there. And you have co-benefits on a national scale. Do I get extra time because of all these clicks? Protector, yeah. You all are future doctors, and you will have to see your patients as they suffer. For example, a diabetic patient, a patient with diabetes, is very much vulnerable to heat, much more than non-diabetic. So you will see them, and you will try to protect them, and you have to know which of the diseases that come to your clinic are aggravated by climate change. These are the good ones. And now come the danger points. Health is a victim. So health is suffering from climate change. But health is also, health care is a perpetrator. In Germany, it's 6% of our national footprint. 2.5 times more than the air traffic. Look at the media. What do you see when there's a thing on climate change? You see either a jet taking off or you see a car with a diesel exhaust. These are not, you never hear about the health system. But we have to put it on the agenda. We cannot not be interested what the carbon footprint of GMH, Hospital, University, GMU hospital footprint is. And at the same time proselytizing the world emit less. Then I will briefly touch on this. Through physiology, which you all know, climate change reduces your ability to get rid of heat and to work under the heat. And there are curves from the International Labour Organization that are frightening. So the productivity loss mediated through health physiology, and you are the expert of physiology, you should tell the World Bank, listen, it's not about only being good and being nice to people, but it's also saving your GDP. And to many, unfortunately, this is a stronger argument than the health. There's a delay. Is there anything we can do about the delay? Okay, victim. Huh? Thank you. Very good. I'm always open. You can anytime you can make suggestions and as I said, there are health losses and damages. So we want to mitigate, prevent. We want to treat, adapt. But there's something, particularly in the low-income countries, that is no longer. The horse has left the stable. as the English say. So you want to calculate health loss and damages in DALYs, years of life lost from climate change plus years of life lived with disease equals climate attributable DALYs, burden of disease. That is, if we together, we are on the way, but we need bright minds to join us. If we can do this until COP30 in Brazil, in November this year, we will have certainly a possibility to present this. And then with the research, we are in all of this. From the positive side, we want to document the positive side, and we want to document the negative side so measures can be taken. I will talk mainly on the black highlighted items. So climate change, as we've seen this bubble there, what does it do to health? Yeah, you know that higher temperatures is the main lever that the climate uses for all the other nasty things. So the oceans are too warm, too high, too sour. And you as an island state or archipelago, how do you say that? Archipelago? Archipelago? Many islands. You are very much affected by it. Then there is, of course, rainfall changes. Don't think it gets hotter, it gets drier. That's wrong. If you're in your bathroom and you turn up the hot shower, you know that there's more water in the air. So hot air can carry more water. So you have violent downfalls, but you also have droughts. So it's the variability of rainfall that makes the biosphere suffer, and us. Sea level rise, we said that already. Extreme weather. So there are two groups of effects. The ones you see in the news every day, landslides, hurricanes, and the climate deniers say, oh, we had that before. But statisticians can show you that there's an increment getting bigger and bigger in duration, severity, and frequency of severe events. And you are, as you say yourself, you're a supermarket of catastrophes, natural catastrophes. And here's one catastrophe enhancer. And you have air pollutants, they call it in climate jargon, the the short-term climate pollutants. Short-term climate pollutants, that means if you have a diesel car, you have a lot of particles. And if you have a coal power generator, that's the same. So they are included in the climate agenda. So, and then you have, this is just a broad, there are more than 120 climate sensitive diseases that are made worse by climate change. But these are the main groups. Malnutrition, diarrhea, vector-borne, you've controlled almost all of them except dengue. Respiratory, heat stress, stroke, cardiovascular, diabetes, not so well known, and mental disorders. You hear more about the mental disorders, and I will give just one example on heat stress and malnutrition. But that's easy said. This graph is modified from from a paper by the Lancet, the first Lancet Commission on Climate Change. But how, to whom, the classical epidemiological questions, how much, to whom, where, and when, remain for you all and us to be found out. It's a black box. Climate sensitive is the term, CSD. Okay, now the plot thickens, if you like. These 120 plus diseases have been around before climate change. And many climate deniers say so. Oh, we've had malaria before. What do you tell us new here? But there is an increment. There is no disease that is only caused by climate change. Climate change only aggravates already existing diseases. That's very important to know. So you have a base. This is a cartoon. Yeah? I wish I could put this with data, but I can't yet. So you have a base burden, a base prevalence or whatever, and then you have come forward. Here's plenty of space in the front, plenty of space. Don't try to stand in the back. Huh? What's that? So there's a base burden, that's the light blue, and then there's this incremental burden, that's the red. Yeah. And if I could, and I challenge you to join us, we would add all the red parts, the red bits together, and tell the climate community, you know what? You have not been interested in climate. You have done everything on agriculture, forest, tourism, road networks, infrastructure, but there's no interest in health. And then they will say, yeah, where are the data? And then we will say, look, we did this study, all the red points. It's such a percentage of the total disease burden, the aggravation part. If we could say that in dollars or in dollars, I don't care, that would make a big difference. I think the gentleman sees when I'm trying to, and then he puts his button. We collaborate very, albeit with a delay. Comprehensive health metric, you know all about DALIs and QUALIs. Mm-hmm. Can we check? Yeah, after. Okay. So in Burkina Faso, West Africa, we have a HCSS that has been running now for 33 years. And there we have, as in all the others, we have looked, we have death statistics. Only death statistics are possible in the run-of-the-mill classical HDSS, such as yours. And that is a major constraint. But let's take what we have, and you could do this in your HDSS tomorrow, because you have all these climate-sensitive diseases as diagnostic categories. You can also only say that is the burden of climate-sensitive diseases. You cannot say within these diseases that's the burden of climate change. I hope this I made myself understood. So about a third of the disease burden in this country is sensitive to being negatively impacted by climate change. Other studies find 50% even. Again, I'm not saying that 50% of the disease burden comes from climate change, but at least 50% or 33 in Burkina are kind of reacting in a bad way to climate change. Now, since we're in a university, what are the plot thickens and thickens. So it's really worthy of the brightest minds. They're all here in the room. This is also a cartoon, just a thought experiment. Baseline of disease burden. Of course, it's not static, but for simplicity, I assume between now and 2100, this is the base burden, untouched by climate change. You know, that's the potential health impact. It's not linear, yes, but it increases. We don't know how much, we don't know which disease, and so forth. But we have to expect that it increases. But people are not sitting on their hands. There's mitigation. Even if we're all lamenting that it gets worse and worse, there is a halving of the CO2 emissions since 1992 in the world. So we make progress, but we don't make enough. So that progress, if we emit less, would flatten that curve, wouldn't it? And then comes adaptation. We are talking about health now. Let's assume we had a magic wand and we can protect all people against the negative effect of climate change. Then we wouldn't worry. Of course, we cannot, but there's certainly an impact. So, yeah. So this blue part will be averted, conceptually, by mitigation. And the green part, and by mitigation, we would also generate co-benefits, which accrue in the base burden. So fewer, let's say, fewer colon cancer because people eat less red meat, more mobility, fewer cardiovascular and so forth. So we do generate positive effects in the base burden. Okay? And now comes, I hope, adaptation. Another slice is taken away. So basically it's a moving target. It changes, the components of the health impact changes, and basically you have this part as the net burden. And if I have a wonderful Einsteinian formula there, the net impact, it's here. Ni, I think there comes another one. Yeah, this part is net impact is X, the total minus A plus B plus C. You can have the slides afterwards to go through this again, maybe. So in your practical research, you don't have to consider this exactly, but it's good to have it in your mind that health impact of climate change is not static over the century. That's a slide from Tony McMichael. Again, he's the founder of climate and health science. Unfortunately, he died 10 years ago, Australian. So he answered, when I asked him, how can I study something that is developing over 1, 2, 3 decades, and my funding period is only this. And he said, well, don't despair, learn from the past. So, and that's where the HDSS comes in. The HDSS has up to 60 years of retrospective health data. Even if it's only mortality, they are good data, and they are on cause-specific death. So a lot can be done, and you can always mix the climate signal, let's say heat, in the simplest way, from satellite or from meteorological retrospective. The problem is always the health data. This is why we shouldn't reproach others to not have interest for health, because that's so difficult. But the HDSS is a wonderful tool to generate long-term health data in harmony with the long-term evolution of climate change. So then you don't sit on your hands and just look backwards. You look at current impacts. All these diseases, what are we measuring now? Of course, diseases, not only deaths. Because death is hopeless as a health indicator. You must have learned this in your courses, and if not, for climate change. Because you can't wait until somebody dies to have this. And it's, thank God, a rare outcome. You don't get statistical correlation very well. You need morbidity, diseases. Unfortunately, HDSSs in the current form do not use and do not care to take into account diseases. They only care about death, I'm sorry to say. And then the pink part, projective modeling. If you know the exposure response function, 1 degree, let's say 1 degree of increased heat creates so and so many diabetes cases or deaths, so and so many malnutrition children, malnourished children. Then you tell this to your sisters and brothers from climate modeling, and they can take this exposure response function and plug it into their projection. Then we can say, under this scenario, under this model, to 2050, we will see such an increase in this and this and this disease, or in the entire climate attributable burden. So that is the story. Don't despair because the time frames don't fit. Yeah, and this is now, I'm not only saying nice bubbles and, oh, it should be like this, and think about this. This is a real project I had the privilege to initiating in Heidelberg with 9 European, mainly German, but also Swiss universities, and a climate modeling, the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research. And here's our concept, and it's still alive, this project, so it's still gathering data with African partners. It's called Climate Change and Health in Sub-Saharan Africa. Similar things can be done here. So there's an empirical part, which is based on the new data model of CHEERS. Can't do it with HDSS. Empirical studies, we measure health impact, and we have adaptation trials. You remember? This is health impact, and this is adaptation. Okay, then with our friends from Potsdam. So you have the exposure response function I just told you, and then you have the adaptation response function. We have a project on cool roofs, lowering the temperature by 2.7 degrees. And we have randomized control trial, those with roofs or without roof. So if you can say cool roofs lower the burden of heat stress by so and so much, then they can even put this into their climate models. They can say without adaptation, it will be thus by 2050, and with adaptation, it will be here. An amazing power we have, and we are sitting on the data. We just have to modify it in a way that is not so costly, and we'll talk about it. So these two functions, empirical data that the modelers are loathing for, that are longing for. I become a karate player after this. So that's the pick, Potsdam incident. These are climate folks. You need to find climate people if you want to project. And you will find them. They are everywhere, every country. So they have models that exclude always health, I can predict. But models on agriculture, on water cycle, and all the rest of it. And as I said, from here, you come from health impact current. With their help, you can health impact future. From adaptation results, you can model adaptation future. And that is so important for policy and politics and upscaling. So if you're looking for something that's relevant, join us. This is something that's really, there's a huge gap. We're sitting on the data. We just need to leverage the data in a smart way. Yeah, this is the red line, but it's kind of the border where the one data are handed over to the modelers, you know. Yeah. She proposed to do to click everything through, but then it's too fast for you. Okay. An example, because I don't want to take only about concept. These are construction workers. Could be in Indonesia, is in India, but farmers, construction workers, police. Yeah, they are exposed. No air conditioning.
Recording in progress.
It's about time. I wish I could. You can record very well, but I need to. These are curves I always show in this kind. Look, this is 100% work capacity at the back, at here in the vertical. So woodcutter, forest worker, he has 500 watts, very strong worker. This is you all, unless you're cutting wood. Computer workers, but they all, that is a surprising thing. You would think a woodcutter loses much more because he's sweating all the time. No, everybody, and those who have worked in hot countries without air conditioning, trying to write your thesis, you know that it takes about 3 times as much as if you're in a nice air conditioning room. Yeah? So, and lo and behold, you lose 50%, 50, of your work capacity if the global warming is 2 degrees, which is an optimistic projection. Yeah, so it's a huge impact, and it's mediated by our field, health, the physiology, sweating or not sweating, pulse rate, or can you still increase your pulse rate? Do you drink enough? Dehydration, and all the rest of it. So, and I'll show you at least one. Here's the line, by the way, where it is no longer fun. You ruin your health. 32 degrees. And this is WBGT, which is humanized temperature. You may not have high temperatures, but you have high humidity. And the human physiology reacts to both. So in Burkina Faso, we have easily 40, 45 degrees, but it's dry, no drop of rain. And here, even if you have 35 degrees and it's 100% humidity, you suffer as much, your body suffers. So, just to show one example, One example. Okay. These are climate models that go from, so we gave our exposure response function to these climate models. We walked the talk. And could you please, with all the wonderful models that you do here, I don't even understand what this means, but it also all goes up. That's my understanding. And here is 32 degrees. That I understand because I'm a doctor. And so here you see already 2040, half of the climate models go beyond that dangerous 32 degrees. In Kenya, it is reached later because it's in the highland. They have not these high temperatures. Yes, they have humidity, but they have it's substantially lower. Kenya, the equator runs through Kenya, by the way. Your brothers and sisters, climate-wise. Yeah, and this is heat exposure today. And it's again the humanized temperature. And I have a film where this shows over the decades until the end of the century, and you will see that your wonderful island will become dark red, meaning the days of heat exposure beyond 32 degrees. Many low and middle income countries are estimated to lose 2–3% of GDP in 2030 in 1 year due to increasing workplace heat exposures. Workplace can also be a sweat room, sewing clothes, sewing nice clothes in Vietnam or here or in Bangladesh. So we are not only talking about, yep. But I have like in soccer, we have, there's no injuries, but I was 3 minutes overtime. Okay. Now, again, this is something now on child mortality. We looked at how child mortality is influenced by crop failure, because the area around Luna in Burkina Faso, people eat what they grow. So they are subsistence farmers. You see, the models say the output of the harvest goes down. This is the proportion of the harvest failure from climate change. So it's a kind of the climate attributable fraction of crop failure. Of course, you have locusts, you have bad, all sorts of pests, but the largest amount is rain-fed agriculture. And that translates into child malnutrition. Well, you don't need this just to show a little bit off. I don't understand it. This is the agricultural model and the health model based and fed with our data. It's not the first time that you see this, and she laughs every time. Yeah, and that's the paper. You know, we also do. And what the main, if somebody asked me the elevator speech, the World Bank representative of Indonesia, I meet him in the elevator. So what about the impact? I will say, sir or lady, all-cause mortality of under 5s in your country, well, this is Africa, from weather-related crop failure would increase about twofold under a 1.5 degree scenario. So these are data from 10 years ago, and we are already at 1.7. And by 2100, we will be way between, at the end of 2.8 is the current estimate. So an enormous impact. And he would fall off, of course, and said, come to my office, I will fund your project immediately. And that is wishful thinking. That's the Cool Roof trial, you know, the trial you do this community-based RCTs run like pharmaceutical RCTs, control and you have outcomes. And so it showed that the cool roofs lower the temperature by 2.7 degrees, and that has impacts on pulse, sleep quality, blood pressure, and all these, and of course, humidity and temperature. Now I come to the main part. Sorry, it took a little bit longer, but there's technique attributable fraction. So Upscaling. I don't know how many of you know, can I have a show of hands? How many know the term HDSS? Ooh, you have some proselytizing to do. You know it. You know Fatma. Fatma is the head of the HDSS. And she's a lecturer, so you maybe want to have a lecture on HDSS, because I see more than half don't know. Anyways, it is a long prospective cohort, whole population cohort, multi-purpose cohort, dynamic cohort, size between 25,000 and 250,000. MATLAB, you've heard MATLAB in Bangladesh, very famous. Many of the interventions that you read in your textbooks come from there. Anyways, so it's a long-term cohort. They measure, it's called demographic, the D, health and demographic surveillance system, yeah? So the demographers, sorry if there's anybody in the room, they're interested in death, birth, immigration, outmigration, and collateral, the confounders and all the rest of it. But these are the outcomes. No morbidity, no burden of disease. So we have to educate them, and we have to add this. Just remember this term, climate, health, evaluation, and early warning system. A little bit long. We called it, the effects are a little bit delayed. Cheers. Cheers is the new HDSS, which is climate ready, but at the same time, even better for any health-related study, because it includes morbidity. So I compare, I really thought that everybody knows HDSS. I compare HDSS, the old system, which is done by 65 sites in, I think, 30 low and middle income countries. It's the same definition, same way. So you have a full population cohort. We built on this. It's not completely new. Death cases, cause of death by verbal autopsy. I leave it to Fatma to explain what this is. So there's interviews with the next of kin, and you've figured out with high validity what this child died from. Yeah, and that's what we add. We take a 10% representative sample, and we treat it heavily with finding out about diseases by questionnaire, very sophisticated, trying to find out how much they suffered, Likert scale, trying to find out whether they feared the child or the adults die, to get a sense of the disability weight in the Dali formula. Yeah? We have the beginning of the disease episode, we have the end if it's not a chronic disease. Yeah? Okay. So we have acute and chronic illness. You have almost only, not only, but mainly chronic NCDs. So people die not readily of NCDs, and if so, they die at old age. But you want to see what they lived with and at what reduction of quality of life. And they are not in the HDSS screen so far. Wearable sensors, that is pulse, ECG, temperature. Sandra will talk about this, so I will just say we measure health directly. It's not only reported health, it's objectively measured health. Yes, you can take a blood, but it's not part of the core system. It's up to you if you want to have HbA1c, get an ethics approval and do it. Eliminate seasonal bias. I won't talk about this. Every week in the year has the same number of interviewees. Red card. Overtime, 1 minute more. And then comes the environmental. That's for the climate thing. These are also very important variables for climate change. The green ones are now the environmental. You want to have a weather state. And we hear more of this from her. I won't get into it. You want to have indoor temperature where people live. You want to have satellite data for the biomass or harvest. You can do harvest quantification. There's a lot of things you can do. And we have a new database archive. For those who are techies, a graph database. It has nothing to do with graphs and figures. It's a neuronal network, similar, very adaptable. So I think I stop here because I see so many red. Can you click through this quickly, because quick, more, quick. That's the whole thing. You can look it up. Leave the presentation. More. Yeah, and these are the running times from 1960 to 2020 here. The duration of these cohorts. Where do you have this? This HDSS cohorts. But there's hope, because there are a lot who are operating already according to this according to this age. Can you go back? Yeah. So there are a lot already operating shears. One is Nuna. That's where I grew up almost scientifically. And there's Kisumu in Africa. There is Seko. We'll hear more about Seko. And there's Sleman here. I hope you are interested in adopting shears. Those are interested, the yellow ones, and the red ones are already on board of developing shears, going that extra mile. And there's funding, and if we work together, we'll get it. And mind you, the whole, if you count all of these person years under observation, please write this down, 115 million. And at the next epidemiology lecture, you say, I know a collaborative cohort system with 150 million person years observed. He will fall or she will fall off her chair. It's never heard of. So this is a treasure chest which we are sitting. How to get there? Last slide. SECO as a regional hub, Southeast Asian community.
Regional hub for Asia climate change and hub.
Okay. She will talk more about this. So there's already in Malaysia, in Vietnam, in Thailand, there are already like-minded universities who want to do this. And we have material needs to be standardized, so we can do collaborative studies. And there's IRGC, you talk about this next. Heidelberg, we are writing and submitting within weeks a proposal of a network proposal with 11 of such sites, meeting, exchange of ideas and so forth. So these two are alive as we speak. So I'm not speaking about the future. And she will tell you, Sandra will tell you more about others in the oven, other proposals in the oven. But no funding organization likes to fund the core HDSS or the core cheers. They want to see papers. This is a public good, global public science good. So we need to look at development organization like the World Bank, Gates Foundation, Rockefeller, corporate. You have palm oil producers, I'm told. In this country, you're the largest producer on the planet, which is, of course, has a large negative climate footprint. They want to have corporate social responsibility. We in Heidelberg, we have a big cement company, Heidelberg Cement it's called, and they fund a project because they have a bad conscience and they want to put it on their website. Pause. Why do we do this? Science, publications, also, but I do this because of my first grandchild. And you do this, of course, for all your children or nieces and so forth, because they are going to suffer what we do today. Terima kasih. Grazie in Yogya, I hope. So I go local. And that's the end of my presentation, the long-awaited end of my presentation. Thank you. You want to check the batteries?
Yep. Thank you very much, Prof. Reiner. Please give more applause to Prof. Reiner. Yeah, Prof. Reiner, it's such enlightening presentations. So if anyone want to ask about Prof. Reiner point of view about climate health and and health. You may ask after all of the presenter finish their presentations in the question and answer sections. And Prof. Reiner mentions about the needs of adaptations and mitigation strategies, also the needs of the upscaling HDSS system right now, so it could become more ready to the climate change. Thank you so much, Prof. Reiner. We'll move to the next speaker. But before that, I would say welcome to everyone who joined us through Zoom meeting and also YouTube. I hope the voice is clear for you. And also, I want to say thank you very much for joining us. We have Prof. Watwa Sari Tetradewi here. She is the member of Master of Public Health and the same department with me in Health, Behavior, Environment, and Social Medicine. And also we have Pak Dr. Lutfan Lazwardi. Welcome. Thank you for joining us, Pak Lutfan. And also we have the one and only, the head of HDSS Sleman. We have Ibu Septia Kurnia Lestari. The responsible for this event, Ibu Septia Kurnia Lestari. Can you please? Yeah, welcome. Thank you for joining us. And also some lectures also here. We have Dr. Daniel. Hi, Dr. Daniel. Thank you for joining us today. And yeah, we'll move to the next speaker. We have Prof. Tintin Su from, is that Sandra? Okay. We have Sandra. Dr. Sandra is the faculty member and coordinator of the elective track Global Health and leads some projects in the University of Zambia in Africa. And her primary area of interest is digital global health, specifically how to use technology to improve global health, particularly artificial intelligence and machine learning. So without further ado, please, Dr. Sandra, the floor is yours.
Oh. No, I have it already. I have the pointer. Presentation. Okay. I try as close as possible. Yeah. Yeah, good morning. Well, my slides are hopefully coming in another minute or maybe a few seconds. My name is Sandra. I'm from Heidelberg Institute of Global Health, where I lead the working group on digital global health, where we are researching how we can use digital technologies for the betterment of global health. We have many projects in climate change and health at the moment, where we use particularly different kind of biosensors, also wearable devices. I will speak about that, or you can actually see them when my slides come up. The idea is that we use these wearable devices to understand individual impacts of climate change or environmental exposures on human health. Because currently, as you may know, maybe you've come across some studies that, great, okay, fantastic. I'll try to go a bit quicker because we are like 30 minutes behind. So yeah. So I already gave the introduction. So we are so which direction do I point? It doesn't. No.
No, we cannot run it from the computer. That would be.
I don't know. I think there was here. Okay. All right. Next, then we just do it like that.
Next slide.
All right. As you may know, Rainer has already mentioned that, just to give a short introduction, why we are doing this. Climate change, this is a systematic review. You all have the citation, so you can read up the literature if you want to know more about that. Basically, what you can see here are the different pathways of how climate change is impacting diseases, and this systematic review has included over 3,000 studies, so loads of evidence, and they found like 1,006 ways how climate events can make diseases worse. Over half, so 58% of human diseases could become more common or severe due to climate change. And they found over 277 diseases which are aggravated by climatic hazards. Interestingly, also 63 diseases which are basically decreasing because of climate change. But the overall message is climate change is impacting many diseases, and particularly vector-borne diseases, which you can see here, like malaria, for example, which is transmitted through a vector. Next, we just go quick. It's also cardiovascular diseases which are impacted by climate change. So through global warming, we have more heat events, which also lead to more air pollution. For example, a hotter environment leads to more ozone. Also, for example, more pollen production. So we have many problems that are coming through climate change that are related to air pollution. Then we also have the vulnerabilities added into this mix, which are impacting essentially health effects through this climate change pathway. Just to give you another example. Particularly, for example, we see air pollution is having a strong impact on cardiovascular health through oxidative stress, for example. But also noise and light pollution because it disrupts the circadian rhythm. Climate change, of course, because we are faced with more heat, more wildfires, more air pollution. And then there's also the chemical pollution because a warmer environment leads to an increase in chemical reactions. So these pathways all lead also to increased cardiovascular risk through climate change. Next. So how do we measure heart rate? For example, like the gold standard at the moment is ECG, where we put a couple of sensors around the heart to kind of measure the electrical pulse of the heart, let's say. And the wearables, they emit a light. Maybe some of you are wearing, I see some of you are wearing some wearable devices, so you'll see that they emit some green light. So essentially, the feedback of this light gives back information which then can be used to approximate heart rate, for example, but it's also used in many other devices like pulse oximeter, but you can also use some apps which have a smartphone light analysis, essentially, so where you put your finger on the camera and then the light kind of makes it possible to kind of get this data. Next slide. Just to give you an example, so this is a large-scale study which was conducted in the US, where we have, or they have been using these wearable devices, so the Fitbit, which many of you may know. It's a very common device available in the US, and they have included over 47,000 participants in 5 different states in the US. And they have used this data for real-time surveillance of influenza-like diseases. So typically the data comes, like, let's say by foot through CDC. And what they have done is use the data which automatically was transmitted to Fitbit to have a real-time surveillance. And you can see the different data curves are very similar. So we see that we really can use these devices even for real-time surveillance. Next. In Germany, we had a COVID-19 study where you could donate your wearable data to the German CDC, which is called the Robert Koch Institute. And essentially, this is also an example of how we can use this wearable data. So you can see here 2 different individuals if you look at the right-hand graph, and particularly you can see a difference in the resting heart rate between the unvaccinated, which is the red line, and a vaccinated person. As well as you can see, the sleep duration was also not impacted as much. So you really can see even individual differences in kind of these infectious diseases. So you can even use these consumer-grade wearable devices to get kind of this granular information on this level. Next. We did a systematic review to see how wearables are kind of worn, and you see most of them are worn on the wrist. Because I guess it's the easiest for the light sensor. There are some on the chest, maybe you've seen them, particularly for sports player, they have this kind of chest strap. There's also some on the hip, and maybe you have seen there's also some for the finger. The Aura, which is particularly good for sleep surveillance. Continue. Also what we see looking at how many studies are using wearable devices for research, we see an increase in studies. So more and more researchers are using wearable devices to understand health in populations. But what we also see is that a lot of the research is only going on in the high income countries. Very few are yet done in lower and middle income countries. Next. So what are we doing in the project? Or in general, what does CHEERS means that Rainer just spoke about? So this climate change and health evaluation and response system. Similar to the wearable data, we have pretty bad data for low and middle income country looking at climate and health. So the idea is that we basically increase the quality and quantity of data for health and climate, so to better understand what is actually happening in these populations. Because if we don't have the data, if we don't measure things, we don't understand it, right? Like if we don't have the data, we don't know what is happening. So how do we make the data better? That almost sounds like making me, okay, sorry about that. But the health related data, so we are inviting study participants in the different regions. We work together, and I will tell you which regions we are working together. We give them these wearable devices, so we just learned they're working really well. And we are handing them out to larger populations. Then we also include or continue these questionnaires. We add morbidity questions, so we ask people, did you have a disease? Did you feel unwell? Like to understand from their feedback also. And we include specific health assessments for climate-sensitive diseases. For example, in Burkina Faso, we are doing respiratory illnesses because of this link that I've also just shown between climate change and air pollution, for example. For the climate data currently, what we do is we upscale weather stations. So if you're curious, you can look up some studies. Most of the studies, they use weather stations which are hundreds of kilometers away from actually the populations that they look at. So, and also you know yourself that the weather is very local. So maybe here it's not raining, but maybe 5 kilometers away it is. So it's really not good data. I mean, it's better than no data, but it's really not great. So we are introducing weather stations on a more granular scale in these study areas. We also use remote sensing, so satellite-based images to understand environmental developments in these study regions. And we put sensors in the homes of people. So we put sensors that measure temperature and humidity. Also, you may know this is very new for global health. So typically we don't have continuous data. So even if you go to your GP, the blood pressure measurement is like a one-time measurement, right? It's not something which you have continuously for 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So this is very new. So how do we deal with the data? And for the first time also we understand continuous kind of responses of your human body to environmental exposures. We didn't have this data before. So also the other challenge is how do we deal with all these different data? So we are currently also researching something called a graph database where you can input all of these different kind of data. Because, for example, the wearable wearables are generating a data point every minute. The questionnaire we do maybe once a year, which also but has nevertheless a lot of information. The health assessment maybe we do every 4 weeks, so you can see we have different kind of data points, different kind of details in the data, different timestamps. Also, we have the weather, so there's a lot of mess going around. Also, we have missing data, so nevertheless, we are able in the graph database to connect all of these data, although it comes in different granularities, to an individual. And by combining all of this data, we are able to basically use artificial intelligence approaches to make discoveries in the data, so to see which kind of data points cluster. So can we understand something by the clusters that the artificial intelligence approaches give us? So do these clusters tell us something that can help us? You can continue. To make interventions better, for example. So I go through this quickly because essentially it's almost the same, it just has a different design than the previous slide. But we do sensors on different levels. So as I said, we have introduced the wearable sensors, which is the individual level, so where we capture individual health. We capture household exposures by putting the sensors in the homes of people. We continue the questionnaires, so to understand also kind of self-perceived health from the populations. And we also use the satellite-based images as well as the weather stations on the community level. So we have these different levels, and we are trying to automate the data collection as much as possible, because you can imagine at the moment, we involve a lot of field workers, so this is very costly and costs a lot of energy. So we are trying to use technology to our advantage in the sense that we try to automate as much as possible. You can continue. I just click through a little bit until, yeah, okay. One more? One more? Okay, here we go. So this is just an example of the locations where we have been doing this work, where we have kind of done the introduction of the wearables and kind of the different levels, the community-based sensors, the satellite-based sensors. So we work in Burkina Faso as well as in Kenya. You can click one further, I need to go quick. And we also work in Malaysia, and Prof. Tintin will tell you a bit more about Malaysia and the Southeast Asia Community Observatory in Segamat a bit more. But overall, it's 40,000 individuals. And we get quite some funding to do this work, so it's currently a priority because also the wearables, for example, will enable, for example, telemedicine, so, you know, distant kind of diagnosis, as well as moving forward into precision medicine. So there's a huge interest of many funders of understanding, first of all, climate change better, but also how we can use technologies for the betterment of human health. Continue. And we also hope that we can onboard Sleman HDSS. So there's a Welcome Trust call that we look at, so just also for your kind of prospective career. So there's funding agencies, and Welcome Trust is one of the biggest ones there is for global health, and they do encourage and fund research that looks at how you can make climate change visible, so how you can generate data and translate that into policy making, for example. Next. So just to zoom in a little bit, so in Burkina Faso and Kenya, we built a total of 5 weather stations each. You can see the study area on the bottom right-hand picture, so you see a perimeter around each weather station of about 10 kilometers. So we try to cover the full study area as much as possible in terms of geographical coverage. In Malaysia, we also have tested to make those weather stations cheaper, because maybe you can quickly think for yourself if I ask you the question, how much do you think a weather station will cost, like the ones one we established in Burkina Faso? Just think for yourself. So it's around 15,000 euros, which is around maybe 15,000 US dollars. I don't know how much this is in rupees, but I guess many, many millions. So, yeah. So we have, so you can imagine that it's very tough to fund because we want to increase the weather stations in the study area. So in Malaysia, we have printed a prototype, which is the 3D printed weather station where you print individual components. And we've assembled this, so on the right-hand side you can see the full weather station, and on the left-hand side you can see the 3D printer with the individual components. And now in comparison, second question, how much do you think this costs in comparison to the 15,000 US dollars of the other weather station? Quick mental break. Okay. So it's around 800 to 1,000 US dollars. So it's much, much, much cheaper, right? Yeah, it's okay. Because, I mean, we need some flexibility. It's a bit cheaper, but even than that, but around that numbers. But you can see it's much, much cheaper, and it allows us to upscale the weather stations numbers, like in terms of funding resources, much better. Continue. And we also received, the whole team received a gold award, so for this innovation. And here you can see the video, which is not so fluid, but yeah, basically it's run by a solar panel, and it pushes the data automatically to the cloud. So there's also no need for somebody to go there and input like a memory card and manually collect the data. You can continue. Just to give you another example of the work we are doing with wearable devices, as you may know, malaria is rising globally, although in some locations maybe it's dying out because of unfavorable weather conditions. But overall, malaria cases rise. So you can see between 2022 and 23, it rose by 11 million cases, so it's substantial. And we also have the vectors already in Europe, so it's pretty close to us as well. You can continue. And in Kenya, it's also still a big problem. So what we have been doing in Kenya is replicating a study from the US to see if we can use these wearable devices that we have introduced to predict malaria outbreaks, so basically to build an early warning system based on an Bayesian algorithm. Continue. Continue, yeah, this one. So we have many, many data points of each individual because each individual is wearing the wearable device. So we have many, many data points. And we can set individual, or we can learn from this individual data and set individualized thresholds so that we know when a person's heart rate is kind of off limits. And they have done this also in the study, and it worked quite well. So we did do data collection in Kenya, where we also did malaria rapid testing to know if a person has malaria or not, and then to be able to correlate with the wearable data. Next slide. And you can continue a little bit. So in total, in the US study, they were able to predict malaria 5 days prior the outbreak. If you go one further. Yeah. So you can see in the top graph, like this is one individual, and you can see where it says challenge. That's when they were infected with malaria. And you can even see visually in this case, because it's very obvious from the deviations, that even before parasitemia, so this means when they were able to see the malaria infection in the blood sample. So even before they were able to see the malaria infection in the blood sample, you could see deviations in the heart rate much earlier. So with this individual, for example, it was possible to say even 5 days prior something is wrong. So showing that this is a very good way of building an early warning system where you can inform people even up to 5 days before that, hey, go see your physician, it seems like something is off. Okay. This is just an example of the graph database and how we link the data. So you can see the brownish one is a household, and you can see individual members, which are the green circles, which are part of this household. And we can link individual disease episodes. So paludism, for example, is malaria in French. Asthma, so we can link individual disease episodes. We can also differentiate between acute and chronic. And these links, so these edges, they contain further information. So we can also use these properties which are encoded in these vertices when we use these AI-based approaches. You can continue. So this is actually data from the Burkina Faso dataset. Here you can see a village which is called Mwanzi and the different compounds, and we can also link individual weather station data. So this is really a zoom in, and you can zoom into many different components of the data. Okay, continue. In Malaysia, we are also, now introducing another wearable which can continuously measure blood pressure, which is also very, very new, and it is something that is just introduced, just for your information here. Continue. Okay, add one back. And just to showcase an example of the satellite-based data and how we are using the satellite-based data, for example, is this where we are able to predict how much a field, an agricultural field, can produce in terms of crops. So what we input in this model is the satellite-based images from Sentinel-2, which is free, by the way, so you can go and download this data for yourself. And rainfall data from CHIRPS, which is also for free. And from the Sentinel-2 satellite images, we are extracting indices, which give us an information how healthy and how good the crop is growing. So you can see here one back. You can see the different phenologies of these different crops, and we use this information for a lasso regression model, which then helps us, first of all, differentiate the different crops. So you can see different colors around the fields, which tell us whether it's sesame or some other crops like beans, maize, and so on. And you can see the greener the color, the more crops have been produced or are growing on this field. So we are using this also as an early warning system in Burkina Faso for farmers. And this is the very last slide, so Tintin, you can get ready. Continue. This is very new research from Google. So what they have done is also use large language models for the type of data that we are even generating. So they're inputting the wearable sensor data, the questionnaire data, images as well, and feed specifically trained large language models to predict certain health activities. So for example, how high my stress level will be, how good my sleep quality will be, for example. So essentially, you can communicate based on the data that you feed in this large language model with this prompting that you also know from ChatGPT, for example, and you can ask it prediction tasks. So you can go one further. This is the different data sets it has been trained on. So for each kind of disease or health task, you have different data sets that you can train the large language model on. So for example, we have the mimic, which is the physiological, so looking at kind of heart disease. So each large language model was trained by a different data set to make it, knowledgeable about the specific data and disease task. Next one. You can go one further. So, for example, then you can ask, like by providing this information, so what will my readiness level be? Or given the following information, like what will be my activity level be? So you can ask the LLM even predictive tasks, which is very exciting because it is very easy. I mean, we're going certainly to try this for our own data because this is like really new work. that we can use these LLMs also for health-specific tasks and also for prediction tasks. I recommend, if you're interested, to look up this paper. It was just published end of 2024 by Google. And we will also be able to do this because we are generating all of this data, and hopefully it will make it more efficient for us to kind of analyze the data and use it also for predictive tasks, for guiding people and helping them to live healthier. Okay. I think that was the last slide. Yes, so I shaved off like 4 minutes, Rainer. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Sarah, for the presentations. Dr. Sarah mentions about measurable wearable sensors that are able to detect the climate conditions and the relations to the health conditions of the human. So now we are moving to the next speaker. We have Prof. Tintin Su. Professor Tintin Su is clinically qualified public health physician and researcher with more than 20 years of working experience. And she is the director of Global Population Health, GC School of Medicine, also the director of Southeast Asia Community Observatory, SIECO, and also the director of Regional Hub for Asia Climate Change and Health. Yeah, she is the woman. Yeah. She's the woman, the director of 3 big. So without further ado, Prof. Tin, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Anisa. I think you need 2 cuts and 1 whistle. 1 yellow card, 1 red card, even we don't look at you, you just, whistle it, stop it. So good morning to everyone. So very nice to meet you, everyone in this room. So I'm going to bring you a little bit to Southeast Asia. So the RINA presentation is setting the scene, what is the climate change and how population is impacted, what are the way to mitigate and adapt, climate change, impact on health. So Sandra deep diving, to using, wearable sensors, how are we going to measure the climate impact, to convince, policymakers, predictive models, so on and so forth. I'm a director of Southeast Asia Community Observatory. So this is a Health and Demographic Surveillance Site, HDSS, like a Salaman HDSS. I always name Salaman HDSS and SIGO HDSS as sisters HDSS. But Raina disagreed. He told me you are very gender insensitive. You have to use it, sibling. So Salaman and SIGO are kind of siblings, and we are in the global south. So my presentation will focus on how SIGO HDSS incorporate, climate change and health, and also how are we going to plan, to come for the CHEERS HDSS network, and then particularly how are we going to collaborate, each other effectively, because, each and every individual, we are not strong, but, if we combine, we really make the strong voice, particularly for the region. And once people talk about the Monash University, people always ask, why Monash University in Malaysia? So Monash University, the headquarters is in Melbourne, in Australia, but Monash has an international campus in Malaysia, Indonesia, in Jakarta, China, India, and even in Italy, in the Prato. So yeah, how are we going to run the presentation? I run here. Okay, I think this is also okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm okay. No, I'm more happy to control the slides by myself. Okay, so it's okay, I can do that. No. I have to be there. Okay. So SIGO HDSS established in 2011, in November 2011. So we started doing the data collection in 2012. So we are only a little bit, older than Salaman HDSS. I think we started more or less the same time. So we have a 40,000 population, 64% Malay, 23% Chinese, and 8% Indian, and 3%, we also have Orang Asli. And then we have 2% of plantation workers. So I think HDSS, capture, as usual, dead births, immigration, migration, and mobility module. So next, please. Yeah, so there is a where SIGO HDSS located. Once I show this slide, so I always tell them, Texas Chicken didn't fund, SIGO HDSS on Monash University. So we are in the 6th floor of that building. So Texas Chicken is the ground floor. So the building owner put it, SIGO HDSS Monash University together with Texas Chicken. So sounds like, we are connected to each other, but we have no connection to the Texas Chicken. The next slide, please. So this is a SIGO corporate. We have 3 rounds of census data collection, 4 rounds of update, census update survey. We have 3 rounds of health survey data collection. We have a maternal and infant of SIGO Sagamat project. We call it Miss B. It is a continuous project since 2013. And then we also have a vulva autopsy, like Raina mentioned, the death is one of the important parameter in HDSS data collection. So we have a vulva autopsy. It's a continuous data collection, since September 2014. So please. Yeah, this is kind of a health survey. How many people involved in health survey 2013? 2013, we include, 25,000. And health survey 2018, we have a 24,000. And we recently finished, health survey 2023. And then also, those are the parameter we collected. We have a questionnaires, we have a measurement, blood pressure, height, weight, body mass index, waist circumference, random blood glucose, and questionnaires, we can see everything and anything under the sky, lifestyle, mental health, quality of life, dementia screening, so on and so forth. But what did we include? Climate change variables. I mean, it's almost nothing. And then we also included morbidity module, but it's mainly focusing on Charlson Comorbidity Index, 17 morbidity, and then other illnesses, which is the top 10 cause of death in Malaysia. But Raina mentioned, climate sensitive diseases are 112. So we don't have, that, extensive data collections, for health survey data collection. And next slide, please. Okay, so this is a climate change and health impact monitoring through eHealth SIGO. So we call it, CHIMES project. So this is an inaugural climate and health research in SIGO. So this is a collaboration between Hyderabad Institute of Global Health and Monash University. So Vice President's research of the Monash University, he asked me, oh, you are doing a good connection with Hyderabad University, and particularly you are alumni of Hyderabad Institute of Global Health. Why don't we strengthen this collaboration? So he asked me to set up the Zoom meeting with the director of Hyderabad Institute of Global Health, and there we had a very intensive discussion, and finally we choose climate change and health as an agenda for the collaboration, main collaboration between Hyderabad and High and SIGO. So then, there is a kind of a gentleman agreement. If you apply funding, it takes, if you are lucky, it takes 2 years. If you are unlucky, it takes 5 years. So during that time, both institutes, identifying the area to collaborate, and then also people need to put, something on the tables. So Monash University agreed to support data collection costs, and then also to appoint, 1 postdoctoral research fellow, 1 PhD students, and Hyderabad Institute of Global Health. I have 5 minutes remaining. This is only mine. How much? How many minutes? Oh, okay. You started counting from beginnings. Okay. 5 minutes. What I'm going to do. This is the most difficult challenges than the climate change. Okay, so I ignore. Unless you whistle, I will go out from the room. Now where are we? Okay, so Heidelberg gave expertise, like Sandra, to measure how are we going to use, to measure wearable sensors, and then also by sending, wearable sensors, to Malaysia. So can you show the next slide, please? Okay. So event, we announced, Monash University partner with the Heidelberg University investigate climate change and health, impact. So you can see the date, it was 14 March 2022. It was not very long ago. We are not, very far ahead of doing that. It's just only 3 years, how much, we progress. If, all teams and then both institutes, really committed, the mission to do that. So I think those are the research teams, can you go another slide quickly? The objective, next. Okay, go back. The objective. Can you go back to the objective? Okay. So we have a two phase. The phase one is to explore the social and individual acceptability of the NOVA sensors. We are working with the community. If community don't accept, we cannot do anything. So everything we do is a co-design with the community. We always take the community inputs and feedback, to whatever research agenda we want to do. So I think this is the first steps and very important step. If community does not accept, we cannot do anything. This is, full stop. So very important things, we explore the social individual acceptability and then reliability and technical performance of 3D printer weather station, home-based sensor wearables, as Sandra has already mentioned. Most of the studies were conducted in high-income country because I think the digital literacy and then affordable of wearable devices and then also internet connections are different. We are in the rural area. And then once we upload data from wearable devices in individual house, can you imagine, how much does it take? It's 30 minutes, 45 minutes, just uploading the data because of the internet connection. So finally, we have to bring wearable devices, to SIGO office, and then once we upload, it's finished, within 5 minutes. So it depends on infrastructure's differences between, global north and global south. But we successfully completed, phase one. Now, in phase two, we finished, one objective, Now we are about to do effect of heat stress on appearance and severity of symptoms and people with CVD, COPD, and asthma. So we are about to do. So Sandra mentioned about the wearable devices to continuously measure blood pressure is a part of our last objective. So next slide, please. Okay, so next slide, please. And next slide, please. So it's a showing, going through. So, okay, so this is Sandra showed the version one of a wearable, a 3D printed wearable, a weather station. So this is a prototype 2. So this is a one, we won the gold awards. I pretend that I don't see that. So this is ringgit 2,500. So it's about 500 US dollar. So Sandra mentioned 800 to 1,000 US dollar, but Sandra is also right. I'm also right. How comes we presented two figures and then both of us are right? Yes, because Sandra included the price of 3D printer. So this one's, only the consumables and sensors, so on and so forth, But the thing is that if you have, one 3D printed 3D printer, you can print out a lot of parts, from 3D printer. So it's a kind of very economical way of producing 3D printed weather station. Of course, there are sensors for the temperatures and humidity, and then also collecting the data, call it, motherboard. I'm very digital illiterate person. First time I heard about the Raspberry Pi, I thought it is a food. Finally, I understood, oh, this is something to do with, but It is very easy to do. I mean, so it's not complicated. So we can always share with Salama HDSS, if you want to do. And then we also put it, that 3D printed weather station to Malaysia Meteorological Department, headquarters nearer to KLIA. And then the people from meteorological department, first they saw our 3D printed weather station, they laugh. But once they saw the data, how consistent, data, comparable the data with, professionally measure meteorological data, they say, oh, it is something interesting. And then they allow us, to put our 3D printed weather station in their meteorological department for 1 year. And then they will be giving us the data. Normally we have to purchase data from meteorological department, it will cost 30,000 ringgit, but they say, okay, you can take it, this one, free of charge. So that means they are also interested, to collaborate with us. So next slide, please. So Sandra also mentioned, in her slides, in 2023, so that means, 1 year we started working on Chime project, we bid for the Wellcome Trust heat adaptation intervention, and then we got it, that's 2 million pounds, and Sandra put it euros, so that's a 2.2 million euros. So next slide, please. So those are the teams, involved in that proposal. I mean, that research team, Monash Malaysia, Monash Melbourne, and then we have School of Engineering, Dr. Darwin. So he's the instrumental person, who came out with 3D printed weather station. Of course, in Hyderabad, Till and Sandra. And last but not the least, we collaborate with the Ministry of Health in Malaysia, Occupation and Environmental Health sectors. So those are key stakeholders, who can use our data for further policy engagements, or making policy and then, practice. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So this one is heat adaptation intervention. We have community trial 2x2 factorial design. So we will have 4 arms. So first arms, we have 2 intervention, the structural interventions and then behavior intervention. Structural interventions are painting the roof of the houses with UV reflective paint. So this is a passive cooling strategy. So no need to do anything. So no need to do extensive structural improvements, just paint the roof of the house. Another one is a very much, public health, So that is a non-health intervention, structural intervention. We have a health intervention, behavior intervention. So one group will be receiving, both the structural and behavior intervention, and one group receive only structural intervention, one group receive behavior intervention, and another group, didn't receive any interventions, but of course, we are going to use, we are using, the same sensor-based measurements, plus, we include economic evaluations. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is a project launch, we invited local politicians and stakeholders and researchers, and even, we show how we're going to paint. So that is a painting of the sample house is a launching of the project. Next slide, please. Okay, so now this is a things we can evaluate, we can collaborate together. So the regional hub for Asia Climate Change and Health, REACH Consortium, so that we recently received a funding from IDRC Canada and UK Foreign Commonwealth, Development Office. Next slide, please. So the history of the funding call, IDRC announced the funding call in February 2024 to select and fund 5 regional hubs, 2 in Africa, 1 in Asia, 1 in Middle East, 1 in Latin America. Next. So each hub will be managed by an organization or consortium or organization, and selected regional hub will establish, manage, and support a cohort of network research projects in their respective region. And selected hubs will be expected to develop this network cohort through 1 or more open competitive call on the priority topics. Okay, so I show a lot of things, but in a nutshell, We received funding from IDRC and IFDO, 4.5 million, Canadian dollar. So more than half of, that money we'll be using, to disperse, funding from the regions. So we are going to do 3 competitive call. And then, the success, successful candidates, it could be from University of Gajah Mada, it could be from Kanchanaburi HDSS, from Thailand, it could be, anyone, from the regions, we will make the selection and then we will disperse the funding, we will grant the funding. Next slide, please. So those are the selected hubs, from IDRC. So next slide, please. So we are one of that. So next slide, please. So those are the people who involved, next slide, please. Because my time is already up. So can you go further slides? Until we can see the figures. Yeah, please go, please go, please go. Yeah, okay, please stop. So the 3 areas, we are going to focus. One area is the intervention for climate vulnerable population. So climate vulnerable population can be children, can be pregnant mother, can be older people, or community who always suffer, disaster prone community. So those are the climate vulnerable community. And exposure can be heat, exposure can be air pollution, exposure can be unexpected, natural disaster, extreme weather conditions, so on and so forth. The intervention could be community level intervention, the policy level interventions, and different interventions. So it's really, really a wide area, so people can, apply funding. Another one is the net zero carbon healthcare. So Raina mentioned, health sectors, healthcare events, produce a significant amount of carbon, So how are we going to reduce, carbon footprint, from healthcare sector? So this is one of the agenda. Last but not the least, climate literate or climate smart, healthcare workforce. So what hubs will be doing? What's the sub-awardee will be doing? Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next. Next. No. Go back. I think there is one slide, on hubs. Hubs organization. Yeah, this is a one. And no. Yeah, another one. Okay, so I think this is a one. So we have a hub and then we have a sub-awardee. So the sub-awardee, anyone, who apply the grant, who receive, will be doing the groundwork of data collections, carry out the project on climate vulnerable population, climate smart or climate literate, health workforce, net zero carbon. So hub will be doing data repository, hub will be doing capacity building, and the hub will be doing knowledge mobilization plan. So that's what, we are doing, and then Cheers HDSS. Before, we never ever thought of, linking Cheers HDSS and, regional hub. So we had a very intensive meeting, 1 week meetings, in Kuala Lumpur, start from CSJB, Sagamat, and then go to KLs, Then, we are thinking, why don't we incorporate, that regional hub and the existing, HDSS, Asia network, and then, why do we nest that Cheers Southeast Asia consortiums, in regional Asian regional hubs? Can you go to another slides? Yeah, this is the one, just before pandemic, 5th March of 2020. So people from HDSS Asia came to Kuala Lumpur. We had a very good meeting. Fatwa, where were you there? You didn't come, right? Because I think, 2 HDSS director didn't come because March 2020 is COVID-19, already started. People are really scared about, traveling. So I think Fatwa and Hanifi from Fatwa from Salaman and Hanifi from MetLab HDSS, they joined online. But of course, people who dare traveling, came. So this guy is from Vadu HDSS, and Professor Pascal Alote is from UNU-IGH, the two UNU-IGH, Professor Daniel Redpath, he is also ICDDRB, of course, that's me, and the representative from Chile HDSS, from Chile Lab HDSS from Vietnam, Hanoi School of Public Health. Another guy is, from WHO, our regional office, from New Delhi. So we have one HDSS in India, Vadu HDSS in Bangladesh, 3 HDSS, MedLab, Chakaria, Dhaka HDSS. In Vietnam, Chile Lab HDSS, Malaysia, SIGO HDSS, Indonesia, Salaman HDSS. So 5 countries, 7 HDSS, it covers 600,000 population. And recently, the potential new members, of course, we have to thank Raina, very big, network. So Phila Bavi, HDSS from Vietnam, is also interested, to be part of that Cheers, of course, it can come. So it's a 56,000 population. Kanchanaburi HDSS from Thailand. So Sandra visited to Kanchanaburi HDS that, I joined by Zoom, so 45,000. They are very much, keen to involve, in that, Cheers, Southeast Asia. I gave it the names, Cheers, C kind of the potential names. Of course, the name can always change. And the Philippines never have a HDSS. So even they want to establish, new HDSS and to be part of, Cheers Southeast Asia Consortium. So next slide. Oh yeah, that's it. My presentation. So I think this is the message I want to give to is it is not easy to incorporate sensor-based measurement, climate change components in the HDSS. It is not easy, but this is also not a mission impossible. So we managed to do within 3 years. Why I'm showing things chronologically. We started climate change and health in 2022. In early 2025, we are kind of, a good direction, to go for climate change and health. And then individually, we are not very strong, but as a group, we can be very strong, and then we can shape the future of climate change and health research and policy and practice in Southeast Asia. So this is my team from SIGO HDSS. Thank you so much. Thank you for ignoring. Sorry for ignoring.
Yeah, thank you very much, Prof. Tin, for the presentations. Prof. Tin highlight about the importance of HDSS and its connections, how the data could use to prevent the impact of climate change to health. So thank you, Prof. Tin. We're moving to the next speaker. We have Dr. Julia Friato Corvetto. It's a scientific assistant at the Heidelberg Institute of Global Health. Her work interests are on the impact of climate change, extreme weather events, and heat on the mental health. So Julia will present on the climate change and mental health overview and empirical study in Brazil. So we are moving to the South America. Please, the floor is yours, Julia.
Much. Can I control my own slides, maybe? I think it's easier. They are controlling it? Okay. Yeah, okay. So while I receive my slides, thank you very much for staying until these last presentations. My name is Julia. Thank you for the introduction. I work as well in the Heidelberg Institute of Global Health on the topic of mental health and climate change, basically on how heat influences mental health patients. And maybe I already, since I had 10 minutes at the beginning, but maybe now I have 2.5, probably. So I'll try to optimize the time. We know that climate is rapidly changing. And in parallel to this emergency scenario, we have that mental health disorders prevalence is also rising in the world. To better understand the connection between these two variables, we ran a systematic review, which was published in 2023. And we found that maybe I should wait, actually.
Just talk.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, okay. So there are, that's good. I read my slides very much. So the two main pathways why climate change influences mental health patients. The first one of them, thank you. So I will just, I can do that. So it doesn't work as well. But anyways, as I was saying, climate change, by increasing the frequency and intensity of extreme weather events, of course, affects mental health patients very quickly, very directly. Quickly, sorry. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Your time is now too. So as I was saying, climate change affects mental health patients through two main pathways. The first of them, to your left, we have that extreme weather events, of course, because of its increase in frequency and intensity, affects these mental health patients directly. And not only the mental health patients, but also those without a previous mental health disorders can end up by developing one because of the trauma. In this context as well, we have the so-called eco-anxiety, solastalgia, climate anxiety, all these terms which represent the anxiety or negative emotions toward the future. Well, but less logically, though, is that heat also affects mental health patients. And to your right-hand side, we can see that heat either exacerbate mental health disorders or can generate, among those patients with a previous one, can exacerbate heat-related illnesses, such as heat stroke, or in more advanced conditions, even lead to death. I don't have time to go very deep in every single detail, but I think I wanted to give a quick overview on this topic. And that's what we try to do in Brazil with these two, in my doctorate, with these two facility-based studies. That's what Rainer always says, these facility-based studies are the low-hanging fruits, because the data is already there. We just go, get the data, and deal with it, even if the data is incomplete. Usually the data from these facility-based studies don't provide us with individual socioeconomic status, if that entrance to the system is the first one, or the first diagnosis, or just an exacerbation. But they can provide us with very important information. While these facility-based studies, they provide us with important results, they have intrinsic limitations because they deal mostly with healthcare. We gather mostly healthcare access and not the mental health burden of the population. Basically, these studies, they only assess patients who, despite all the healthcare access barriers, manage to seek care. So basically, is there a laser here? I mean, of light? I don't think so. But anyway. Okay, thank you. So the last one, that's what we measure, in not only the healthcare burden on the population. The healthcare access barriers, what are they? They are when patients don't have time to go because they cannot leave the work, or lack of means of transportation, or maybe the costs of transportation. People don't have money to buy a ticket to go. And these healthcare access barriers are mostly present in low and middle income countries, such as Brazil and also here Indonesia. So what we did in order to corroborate our studies, our facility-based studies, which already showed that mental health patients were under higher risk of needing care. So therefore, we designed a population-based cohort study to be developed in the same city, in the southern region of Brazil. These population-based cohort studies, these studies offer a more reliable and valid assessment of this causal response relationship and also from the assessment of this individual status. The specific objectives of our study was, first of all, to quantify the direct effect of heat on mental health patients and not the healthcare excess use. And the advantages here of these designs are many, and they include remove the bias of excess healthcare excess, and they offer a more refined analysis as well of vulnerable. Okay, I have 5 minutes. I can do that. So I have more refined analysis of vulnerable subgroups as well. And we can analyze if heat can actually develop a mental health disorder and not only exacerbate those. Second, we want to identify as well potential modifiable factors, since now we can have access to more individualized data, which we couldn't before on the facility-based studies. So basically, the primary research questions from our study want to see both for patients with a mental health disorder and without, to understand if heat is related to a lower mental health status on the period after exposure to heat when compared to non-heat period. So here we have our two-stage study design. First, to your left, we needed to get a representative sample of the population, and on these people that we get on our sample, we apply a cross-sectional household survey, with the main focus to screen patients with and without a mental health disorder. You can see that in orange here, and without in black. The questionnaire very quickly is just it's a data collection composed from 4 sections. First, of course, we screen the mental health disorders using the mini questionnaire. Then we also assess socioeconomic status. We assess morbidities in general to control for confounders, and the heat exposure in the house of the individuals, and also the work conditions, because these are very important modifiable factors. Once we have our sample selected, we can then go to the cohort study, which is the number 2 there, and follow up these patients during 6 or months in the city, every day using a chatbot developed for WhatsApp. So every day the person will receive a beep on their WhatsApp, and I know that you guys use a lot of WhatsApp here too. In Brazil, it's also the case. If it was in Germany, it wouldn't work. Yeah, so that's why that increases also how patients will adhere to the study. Né? And the data collection during this phase, at this stage, is based on a very well-established methodology called ecological momentary assessment, which, according to one of the main co-authors, authors from this topic, is a collection of assessment of subjects' current or recent states, sampled repeatedly, so every day, over time, in their natural environments. For that, we will use a 7-point Likert scale to measure, and that's the questionnaire for our second phase. So this is the questionnaire the person receives every day, which will, after that, correlate with heat. The first question is the most important one. I have 2 minutes. The first one is the most important question, which assesses the mental health status. So on a scale from 1 to 7, what's your mental health status? What's your mental health now? From extremely bad to excellent. We also assess the mental health symptoms and possible suicidal thoughts in order to be able to send these patients, to refer these patients accordingly to the emergency centers if necessary. So the expected results, the expected outcomes from this cohort study are, first, we can assess the prevalence of climate-sensitive or heat-sensitive mental health disorders in the city. Besides, we can also, of course, this is the main focus, understand the direct exposure-response relationship between heat and mental health, and also assess the moderators of heat to better to be able to tell policymakers what the recommendations for them. Finally, in this process, we expect to be able to increase knowledge in the community about the impacts of heat on mental health. And here again, this is my final slide, just to remind you, we already saw this illustration before, but now we need to see that instead of measuring the healthcare excess use, we are going to measure the mental health burden directly. And that's what the upgrade from HDSS to Cheers will enable you to do. You already have the HDSS, which is this cohort, and then by including the climate variables to this model and to the morbidity as well, we can just find be more precise in this measurement, and instead of measuring the healthcare excess use, we'll measure the burden on the population. Thank you very much. And go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Julia, for sharing your research regarding the impact of heat wave and the impact to the health in Brazil. Now we are moving to the Central Asia. For the last speaker for today, we have Jamila Nabieva. She is a public health practitioner with a focus on the environmental international development and cooperations over the 10 years, and joined teaching unit in the Heidelberg Institute of Global Health. Jamila, you ready? Okay. So Jamila will present about climate change and mental health in Central Asia. So Jamila, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So before we start, how many minutes do I have? I originally had 5. Oh, I have 10 now. It's getting better. I thought I had -5. So good morning, everyone. My name is Jamila. Are you still awake? Are you still with us? When you came here this morning, did you know it was going to be speed train journey safari through the climate change work globally? So should I remind you? So we started with a great introduction of what global health and climate change work there is. Then Sandra took us to the African continent, then had an introduction to East Asia. Tintin continued with East Asia. Julia took us to South America. So on this very last station of our journey, I would like to take you to a region that is usually very much neglected when it comes to global health research policies and agendas, and especially climate change and health. And that is the region where I come from. We call it Central Asia. And I think it's everyone's poor cousin, because when we talk about Central Asia, what countries are you thinking of? Okay, Uzbekistan. I hear one word. That's good. What? Oh, okay. So Tajikistan is good. So you're right. So the reason why I think this is a very neglected region on so many levels is because this is what geographically called Central Asia. So these are 5 countries with stan that historically were part of the Soviet Union. And that's why a lot of people in this part of Asia think, okay, you know, it belongs there. Exactly. It belongs somewhere there. The former Soviet Union countries, or say the main country, which is Russia, thinks, oh, it belongs somewhere in Asia. Some other political agendas and research donors think, oh, it belongs to Europe. So in the end, you don't see Central Asia on any big conferences that have word Asia in them. And that's why I call it everybody's poor cousin. So nobody really wants to do anything with Central Asia because everybody thinks someone's taking care of this. But again, so this is a geographical map, which normally includes Afghanistan. But for the purpose of this presentation, we are going to talk about only 5 countries with stans minus Afghanistan, because this is what unites them, the common Soviet past, right? So I think I've used already 2 minutes out of my 10. So a very brief overview. As I said, this is a cluster of 5 countries with about 77 million population and has a very diverse geography. That is very important for us because we're going to talk about climate change and its effect on health and economy in the entire region is primarily reliant on agriculture, mining in some countries, and energy resources. Okay, go ahead. The region is very arid, which means it's very dry with very little precipitation. And the key environmental challenges are water scarcity, desertification, and glacier melting. So, usually a picture is worth 1,000 words. So this is a map of aridity. And we as a region are somewhere here. And you can tell by the colors that we in our aridity are catching up with Northern Africa. Okay, so let me just summarize very quickly the main clusters of climate change trends in Central Asia. Number one is rising temperatures, and you may think, okay, this is pretty much in line with what we see globally. So what's different? What's different here is the alarming rate at which the temperatures are rising. So this is probably the only area where we're not neglected. Global warming loves us a lot because we are one of the faster warming regions in the world. Extreme weather events, the frequency of which is growing in connection with rising temperatures, and as you can imagine, all the consequences on health that it may take. And finally, water stress. This is the melting glaciers and also the changing river flow patterns, and that is extremely important for the region where agriculture, if you remember from the previous slide, is one of the key areas of economy, and B, in a lot of the Central Asian countries, water is the main source of power. So we need water not only for our health and survival, but it is also food security, agriculture, and electricity. Now, who are affected? Obviously, the entire populations, but specifically, as is the culture in public health and global health work, we focus on vulnerable populations. So we have rural communities, and in 4 out of 5 Central Asian countries, we still have nomadic tribes. So we have populations that change their place of residence in every season. At the same time, in the same countries, we have air pollution in the big cities. So you can see how the region that is relatively small compared to East Asia has very different problems at the same time. Then healthcare systems in general do not manage to catch up with climate-related health burden. And transboundary water conflicts. This is what I mentioned earlier. Water in our region is not just source of life, as we like to call it. And if you come to Tajikistan, you will see the slogan, water source of life, almost everywhere. So it's not just source of life. This is also a very sensitive political issue in the region. And just to demonstrate what I said, I would just like to mention 2 things. I said rising temperatures and water stress. So this very impressively looking set of graphs here basically just confirms what I mentioned. The temperatures in Central Asian countries have been steadily increasing over the past 50 years, and there is some modeling that shows that it will continue to grow. So we need to keep that in mind. And I said declining glaciers. So yes, we have steppes, we have deserts, but at the same time we have high mountains with a lot of glaciers that were originally expected to last as the main source of water for at least another couple of 100 years. And the projections right now say that we may not be able to provide us with enough water as soon as the middle of this century. So just to demonstrate that the matter has finally caught some attention is that my home country, Tajikistan, is hosting the first UN International Conference on Glaciers Preservation this May, which we hope is going to come up with some solutions on how to control this. So what am I trying to say with this? Okay, so it seems that the effects of climate change on health in Central Asia have finally been acknowledged. So what happens next? You have heard from my colleagues who I think mentioned modeling, climate modeling that help us predict what's going to happen in a different context by different scenarios and how to adapt to them. So one of the modeling exercises that I found that looks at projected impact of climate change in key sectors in Central Asia, you see by different scenarios and by different years, looks at different factors. What do you see here for health? The only thing they found on health is tenfold increase in mud flow risk. What am I trying to say with this? Landslide. So what I'm trying to say with this, even if we attracted the attention of the world that climate change is an issue, the nexus of climate change and health is absolutely neglected in the region. And so in the spirit of showing some love to the neglected poor cousin, Rainer proposed that why don't we start to look at the problem and do what we can do. So what we did this month, we had a rapid literature review just to look what is out there in this connection. We did a bilingual literature search because most of the Central Asian countries still use Russian language as lingua franca for research, science, education, and collaboration, and they mostly publish in the Russian journals. So you will hardly find anything published in PubMed or any other English language databases. So we did both, and we looked at the time range 2000 to 2025, and everything we found was basically 14 publications altogether, half of which are not even research publications. So what we're trying to say here is there is practically no research done on climate change and health in Central Asia, and this is what we hope we can do with our team. And one quick graph showing what we found in the literature is those are the climate hazards that we found from that very limited amount of literature that I presented earlier. And since we don't have enough data, we could only infer from these risks that this would be the list of climate-sensitive diseases that are of a priority concern in the region. So with that, we just wanted to say that there is so much work to be done on climate change and health in Central Asia. And I want you to keep it just, I would like to offer it to you as a brain tattoo. Central Asia, no work on climate change and health. And so one day, if you want to expand into global health, please join the poor cousin and help us tackle the problem. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you very much, Jamila, for your presentation, your highlight about the need for tackling the issues, especially climate change, and its impact to human health, specifically to the poor cousin, not really poor, okay? So, yeah, just a cousin. So, we will say welcome to our session, Prof. Yodi Mahendra Datta, the Dean of Faculty of Medicine, Public Health, and Nursing. And now we're moving to the time that we're waiting for. So we hope that the speaker, this is the question and answer sections. Well, we want the speaker to move to the front. So please, could you please move to the front, to the hot chair? Yeah, please. And everyone, if you have any questions, comments, or anything, please don't be hesitate to answer to all of our speakers. They will not hear every day, so please, if you have any questions, you may mention your name and also who will receive the questions. Anyone? Oh, we have one. Yeah, please mention your name.
Hi, I'm Anissa. I'm a first year master student, and I have 3 questions. First question will be for Prof. Rainer. So my question will be, how can we persuade the government to consider the long-term impacts of climate change on human health and, in turn, the GDP, especially when their focus is primarily on immediate economic improvements and they may not see the urgency of addressing these long-term issues? Well, I think that's the case in Indonesia. Thank you.
Wonderful question. I mean, are you sure you're a master's student, not a PhD or a postdoc?
Yeah.
What a wonderful question. Yes, and I think us health scientists, it behooves us to create the data. You know, we are in an obligation to present them with the data, and they are scarce data. I mentioned that in my talk. So with this Cheers approach, we can generate these data, and of course, you're right. Then we can invite them to look. This is happening in a country. This is the burden of disease from climate change. They've never heard this because we were not able to deliver. And these are the things you can do with the health services, resilient healthcare, and protecting early warning. And there are many things you can do to adapt. But in the end, please go to the COP conference. I mean, tell the minister, let us go to the COP conference to present in your pavilion. There's always a big, beautiful, the most beautiful of them all, Indonesian pavilion with batik, with carvings, you know. And they always have presentations for the delegates of the COP conference. So you can go from here, from community level, up to the global level. The next conference, by the way, is in Brazil. She's from Brazil, by the way. She didn't say that. So in Brazil, with Lula, the president being very strongly committed, so they will give a lot of room for health and climate change. So let's go there. But we need data. We need results. If we just say, oh, health is so important and we are also weak and we don't have the data, sorry, that won't cut it. Sorry, a long answer to a very good question.
Thank you. And then my second question will be for Professor Tintin. What are the key challenges, aside from the cost that you mentioned, in conducting climate and health research in Malaysia? Maybe the condition will be similar to Indonesia, I guess.
Yeah, and this is also another. Okay. So another very good question. So of course, you know, there are a lot of challenges, you know. The first challenge, you know, what I mentioned, of course, the cost, but cost is actually, we can find, you know, the fundings, you know, the community acceptability. So, and we have, you know, very low digital literate, you know, population. So the thing is that, you know, even we explain, you know, sometimes, you know, or oftentimes, you know, they don't understand. So we use a wearable devices, you know, to measure their sleep duration and sleep quality. And often participants, you know, don't wear the wearable device, you know, at nighttime. Because that, you know, sensors, you know, the flashing of the sensors, you know, really affect, you know, their sleep. So we want to measure the sleep duration and sleep quality, and then they decided not to wear. Because they don't understand, you know, what is, you know, our intentions, and then also the way they wear a bit, you know, too loose, you know, I mean, so not too tight, you know, normally it's too loose. And sometimes, you know, some people are a bit, you know, suspicious, you know, particularly that home-based sensor. So it just shows temperature and humidity. But, you know, they are a bit, you know, scared about, you know, is there any hidden camera there? Are you observing, you know, such kind of things, you know? So I think it's nothing, you know, because they have a bit of, I mean, you know, low literacy and low digital literacy. So they don't really get it, you know, what we are doing. So I think it's a more engagement, you know, but once we did more engagement and co-design, working with the communities, you know, from the beginnings, you know, taking their opinions and advices, you know, make it them, they are the part of the teams, to develop the project together. So I think the community engagement is really, really a big step, to do a study there, apart from technical challenges, so on and so forth. I'm sure, I think the Malaysians and Indonesians are very much, similar situation, language and culture. So, I mean, for me, I think the most important thing is working with the community engagement. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you
Okay,
very
thank
much.
you so much.
And my last question is, I'm actually interested in this climate and health research, but I just started to learn about it, and well, I'm asking whether there's a possibility of a maybe short-term research visit, or how can we actually get involved or collaborate with you, Professor Rainer, or the Heidelberg University, sort of.
I think there's many possibilities. How any one of you, you're like anyone who's interested in climate change and health, because we have a lot of studies going on, and so there's, for example, the Erasmus program. There's also DAAD. This is the German Exchange Foundation. There's also possibilities through a project that we have started, Heidelberg University and SICO, or Monash University Malaysia, which is called the ASA program, which is also founded by the German Research Foundation, BMBF. So if you're interested, maybe we can share with Nia or others, or Fatwa. For this year, so how this program works is that you get to stay 3 months in Germany, and you work together as a group of 4. So there's 2 people from Germany, 2 German students, and 2, for now, Malaysian students, but it could also be 2 Indonesian students. So, and they will be 6 months working on a project, 3 months in Germany, and then 3 months in Indonesia. So there's many opportunities, and also happy to share the links with Nia and Fatwa.
Can I just add, there's the Humboldt Foundation, and we have a Humboldt visiting fellow here in the room, and the Yodi was in Heidelberg as a Humboldt fellow, and the Humboldt Foundation has everything from the very prestigious Humboldt professor to master level students. They are climate change scholarships. Climate change, is it scholarship? What do you call it? Look at the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation website. They have for all categories, from student to guru. They have all for everybody. They have even a special program for low and middle income countries. So they have something for everybody. If you have a nice topic, if you're proposed by your university, and then you have a high chance. Yeah. Okay.
So don't forget your cousins. Malaysia. So there is also a lot of opportunity in Malaysia, particularly in Monash University. So Monash University, we have a graduate research scholarship. So it's include the tuition fees. Actually, Monash tuition fee is high, but it could be 100% waived, and then also the living costs in Malaysia for 3.5 years. So this is also possible, and particularly our regional hubs. So let's say someone from University Gajah Mada successful getting the grant, from the regional hubs, So one PhD student, from here, so we can try to talk to our campus management, and then get the scholarships, So then the co-supervision approach, we can do it, So from University Gajah Mada co-supervisors, Monash co-supervisors, and then student can come to Monash and then also go back to Indonesia to collect the data. And then, in Monash University, there is a students mobility program. That means once you enroll to the Monash PhD program, you have a chance, to go to Monash Melbourne, 3 months, to do the mobility program. So there are a lot of doors, can be open, for you. But the most important thing is that you knock, every door. So there are a lot of opportunities, for capacity buildings, in any institute.
Thank you. Can I then add one more door that you can knock on? I think there is an open call right now. I might be wrong about the foundation name, but I think it was Bayer Foundation. We'll probably send the links to Nia again. So currently it's an open call for fellowships, specifically for a 6-month climate change and health placement at some partner institution. So I think that is also a great opportunity, but we need to send you the link so that yes, I will send this to Nia, and I hope Nia will find a way to circulate it with the meeting participants.
Oh yeah,
Thank
I've
you.
heard that one about the Bayer Foundation for Climate and Health Fellowship, something. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. I guess I'm so sorry. Just one questions. I'm so sorry for win the funds. So one more questions. Yeah, short.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
My name is Asa. So me and Nisa are learn in the same major in public health, in environmental health. So in Indonesia, in 2023, the Indonesia's Financial Service Authority introduced a regulation on carbon trading through a carbon exchange as the part of its nation's climate change mitigation efforts. However, some argue that these policies, like carbon trading, is not necessarily in Indonesia because developing nations like Indonesia may face economic burdens. So, given that climate change affects not only the environment but also public health and mental health, is this truly an appropriate mitigation strategy for Indonesia?
It's a carbon question. Well, I congratulate the government that they have started this. Everybody on the climate policy says the ideal tool is a carbon tax. If we were able to tax it everywhere, like we did with nicotine, with cigarettes, that would be the best thing. But then most countries wouldn't do it, they let others do it, and then the others, for example, the European Union they get a competitive disadvantage towards China and so forth. So, but it's always a good idea if it's socially buffered, because those who will suffer most are the poor. They have to commute to work, they have to use fuel, and that fuel will rise. And if you have AC, you have heating in cold countries, that will disproportionately affect the budget of poor households. Though the Swiss have done this in a very wonderful way. They have said, we don't want your money. We only want to give the signal that this thing, the fuel, is bad. Use it economically, and then they give back for Christmas, by the way, or you could do it for Ramadan or whatever. They give back the sum that they have collected as a transfer to this household. So the household can buy food, can buy anything, but they must pay more for gas and for everything. So it gives a signal without robbing the poor. So I think it has to be socially balanced, but it's the right way. Did I answer the question? Okay.
Thank you. And
You can
also,
go more if you like.
maybe one more question about the. So we also learn
Sure.
about building a prediction model in our class. So, but in Indonesia, we often face challenges such as incomplete data sets, very little research in Indonesia, and also concerns about data manipulations. So, given these limitations, how can we develop a reliable prediction models, and also improving our research in climates and health?
Projection models, you never predict, you project,
Prediction
are very
models.
difficult. And I don't know, which level are you, in master or PhD?
Oh, master.
Master.
Yes.
Oh, it's an humongous task for a master class, but maybe, you have the main elements and you can do it conceptually. But climate models are to be gained from climate scientists, and I don't know, there must be a climate change office in Indonesia or the meteorological office has the climate models. I would not, I mean, it's a nice didactic exercise, but I wouldn't have the ambition that you can develop a climate model. That needs thousands of, from all walks of sectors, you know, from agriculture, from everything. That's something you gain by collaboration. You have the task to produce the health data. And before you can model them in the future, just figure out what it does today and what it has done, what climate change has done to health in the past, using your HDSS data. Even if it's only mortality, that can be a paper that you can write within 2 months. Climate change impact on mortality in the Sleman HDSS. Because the meteorological data, even if it's a course, even if you have to go to the airport, a meteorological station, they're easy to gain, even retrospectively. But you are sitting on health data, and health data, particularly in the long run, are so rare. There are only 65 of these cohorts, of these HCSS in the world. So I would suggest, if you look for something that you can do, try to get a PhD on this. Retrospective analysis of Sleman data, mortality on, and I'm happy to be your co-supervisor.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Asa and Anissa, for the questions. So there's so many opportunities to learn about climate change and health. Our speakers also mentioned there's so many opportunities, maybe some fellowship. If you are interested to know more about the data specifically for the related to the climate condition and health, maybe you can go to, I don't know if it's still available in HDSS Lemon, but yeah, there's so many things to explore, so many things to improve. Thank you so much, our speaker and our audience, for coming to today's guest lecture. So we're looking forward for the next session, please, if you have any time. So no, I'm so sorry because of the limit of the time. We need to finish this guest lecture. So now, we have one information related to the postgraduate program on health system. So it will conduct in June in Yogyakarta. If you want to find more about this event, you can go directly to the website. It's an interesting event that held by Master of Health Policy and Management. So thank you very much, everyone. So please give one last round applause to our speakers and yourself. See you around. Sekian, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Recording stopped.
in Asia, about the solution, environment. But it's okay. But, yeah, sure. But it's okay. Australia.
From Australia. Spain. Yes, sir. Yes. It's recovering, so she's waiting at lunch. Oh, she's waiting.